Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Casey Decker.
And I'm Yukari Nakayama. It's hard to complain about these weather temperatures outside, but some rough weather is on the way.
We are in weather alert mode this Thursday morning. Also breaking today, new numbers from DC Public Schools show that just 42% of seniors are on track to graduate. This information is from a mid-year review done by the district itself. This isn't the first bit of rough news the school system has faced in recent months. Last year, as many as 1/3 of all graduates didn't qualify for their diplomas. This review is part of an effort from the new interim chancellor to add transparency. Well, it's that time of year. We are closing in on cherry blossom season. Today, a widow goes on trial for allegedly helping her husband plan an attack that killed dozens of people in a Florida nightclub.
Jury selection begins today in North Selma's federal trial. Selma was married to Pulse nightclub shooter Omar Mateen.
Now to the war of words erupting between Maryland's governor and the Prince George's County executive. Larry Hogan says it's time for Rusher and Baker to get rid of county school CEO Kevin Maxwell. Hogan questioned Maxwell's leadership after several scandals, including allegations of grade tampering across the system. Now, Baker says only the Maryland Board of Education can fire Maxwell and called the governor's comments politically motivated. Baker is the frontrunner in the Democratic primary to challenge Hogan, a Republican, for the governor's mansion in November. There's some crazy wind outside. Hearing the towers out there, they're rattling. It's
yeah,
really
crazy
so
wind outside. My walk to work this morning, there was a lot of tree branches down on the road. So be careful out there and stay with News 4 on the weather this weekend.
News 4 at 4 begins with breaking news.
Good afternoon, I'm Yukari Nakayama.
And I'm Angie Trindade. We begin this afternoon with breaking news. The suspected Tennessee Waffle House shooter has been arrested after a 34-hour manhunt. News 4's Casey Decker joins us now at the live desk with more details. Casey?
That's right, Angie. Just a short time ago, police arrested the man accused of killing 4 people at that restaurant. Nashville police say 29-year-old Travis Reinking is now in custody. He was tracked down in the woods about a mile away from where the shooting happened. More than 100 officers went door to door and through wooded areas to attempt to find the shooter. That shooting, of course, happened a little more than a day ago. The gunman storming into the Waffle House in the middle of the night, 3:30 a.m., firing at the people inside with an AR-15. He shot 8 people in total, 4 of whom died. It's still unclear why he targeted the Waffle House. Reinking is set to be in court next week, and his bail is set at $2 million. Now, this was not Reinking's first run-in with the law. Just last year, he was arrested in front of the White House for entering a restricted area and refusing to leave. So a lot of details to be ironed out here. A lot of questions remain. We're going to be on top of all that for you right here. Make sure to stick with News 4 for all the very latest as this tragedy continues to unfold. Angie, Yukari?
Google Maps is improving its app and making navigation a little more simple.
Reporter Casey Decker joins us from the newsroom with more on the new feature on the app. Casey?
Yeah, so this is pretty cool because it's always hard to find the road you're supposed to turn down, especially if there aren't any visible road signs. So Google Maps is now using local landmarks to help guide drivers to their destination. The app may now reference fast food spots that have visible and large signs to make it easier to figure out where you need to turn. Right now, this update is just being tested, so not everyone is going to hear these landmark-based directions, but don't be startled if you hear, turn right at the McDonald's next time you're out driving and using Google Maps. Now, Google itself hasn't actually confirmed it's doing this yet, but it's all over Twitter. Lots of people tweeting with a sort of pleasant surprise. They just heard their GPS tell them, turn up ahead at the Burger King and whatnot. I haven't seen this feature on my own phone yet, but I kind of hope it do. It seems like it could be pretty useful. Angie, Yukari?
Wow, that is very convenient.
Coming up on Colonial Crossfire, the State of the Union, the government shutdown, and is there another to come? And controversy over the FBI. Joining us on the left, Owen Evans. And on the right, Emmanuel Cessignon. And I'm your moderator, Casey Decker, from the GWTV studios in Washington, D.C. This is Colonial Crossfire. The complicated war in Syria has been going on for 7 years now. American involvement has largely been marginal, but President Trump has now twice ordered strikes against the regime, and with so much volatility at the White House, questions about next steps loom large. Katie, we'll start with you. Were these strikes the right move?
I think it's sending a mixed message.
If he wasn't sending a mixed message, though, if he had always come in saying, we're going to attack Syria, we're going to make sure they don't use chemical weapons, would you have supported that?
No, I think and a lot of people will say, well, look, Obama did it. But isn't that just it? He did it, and Assad still was using chemical weapons.
Where America will not allow horrendous use of chemical weapons in the Middle East.
Now, President Trump has launched attacks against Syria in the past, and almost in his first few months in office, he launched attacks against Syria, and those apparently didn't seem to work. Do you think that these ones will?
Yes. And the reason is because compared to the April 4th,
Right, we're going to have to end our segment there, guys.
Obama
Sorry,
just
we've
kicked out
had
17
such a good
officials.
debate
You tell
here,
me.
but we are running way out of time. So after this, we're going to turn from foreign to domestic policy, and we're going to talk about Speaker Ryan's impending retirement and the upcoming midterm. So stay tuned for more excellent debate.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump more or less helped his
How do
Do you think the president has enough influence within the Republican Party to push out a House Speaker?
I think he has enough. That's a good question. I think that he has enough favoritism.
Nothing to do
Well,
with
actually, this all gets to the question that I wanted to ask next, which is what you think the Speaker's legacy will be. So I'll ask Katie first, and then I'll come to you, Andrew. What will Paul Ryan's legacy be?
Those in place and making sure that spending is in check will be fine.
Nonetheless, we are coming down to the wire here, and Congress has spent a great deal of time on other issues that don't have to do with the budget. Should Congress have paid more attention to the budget so that we don't have this kind of brinksmanship?
I think we had a government shutdown in 2013 under the Obama administration. It's not, these stalemates do happen.
Are widely
But you're
accepted.
saying it's likely
These
that
should have been
Democrats
done a
will
while
not
ago.
provide those 60 votes without a DREAM Act, without CHIP.
That's something that, again, most Americans would agree with.
The corporate tax rate is beneficial for all Americans.
So on this issue, do you think then that this conference committee will be able to create a bill that's passable in both the House and Senate, and that will become law?
I hope for the American people's sake that
It's Supreme Court season in Washington, a big decision on the travel ban, and arguments on issues ranging from gerrymandering to discrimination. First, the travel ban. The Supreme Court last week deciding to allow the latest edition of the president's controversial policy to remain in effect for now. They'll formally consider its legality later on. But in the short term, heavy restrictions will go into effect on people attempting to travel to America from several different countries. Allison, you first. Is this a sign the president finally got it right on this issue?
I think that's what this shows, and I hope that other countries take it seriously.
Levi, is it right that the court has so much, it seems, executive power here, the ability to determine policy like this?
You know, I think that the court is within its purview.
Our panel joins us again now for rapid fire. Some quick answers to some quick questions. Alabama residents will go to the polls Tuesday to cast their votes in the special election to send either embattled Republican candidate Roy Moore or Democrat Doug Jones to the United States Senate. Allison, do you support Roy Moore?
I'm not an Alabama voter, so it doesn't really matter what I think.
Do you think that the credible allegations of sexual misconduct by Roy Moore against teenagers
Oh my gosh.
would be grounds for expulsion from the Senate, more than an ethics investigation, outright expulsion?
If the Senate's Ethics Committee says you need to resign, I fully support that.
I'm going to ask you about Senator Franken. Did the Democrats wait too long to push out Al Franken?
Honestly, I think so, yes.
The president's State of the Union address was a mixed bag. At times, he appeared to call for compromise and bipartisanship, but throughout the speech, he focused on a number of wedge issues. Now, the president also appeared to endorse a number of policies that are not on the traditional GOP platform. Those included prison reform, paid family leave, lowering the cost of prescription drugs. So, Emmanuel, what do you think caused him to bring up these issues in the State of the Union?
Well, once again, he's making a huge push to the middle.
Well, the news cycle nowadays runs so fast it's hard to keep up. You might even forget the fact that the federal government shut down just 2 weeks ago. Democrats refused to support a bill to fund the government without provisions to protect so-called dreamers, children who were brought to America illegally. Republicans would only agree to do that if they could get more funding for border security, potentially even for the wall. The result? For 3 days, the government shut down. A temporary Band-Aid deal reopened it again, but that Band-Aid comes off in less than a week. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, the shutdown itself. Who is to blame? Owen, you first. Now, Owen, was a shutdown really necessary in this case?
Yes. This is a pressing issue.
Right. You can't say you care about the dreamers, and you definitely can't say you're shutting down the government to protect the dreamers.
Now, is it realistic, though, to expect the Democrats to support funding for the wall?
I think it is realistic when Trump has caved so much.
Now, Owen, does the president's apparent independence from the GOP encourage or concern you? RNC Finance Chairman Steve Wynn has been forced to resign his post after numerous women accused the casino mogul of sexual misconduct. It was only a few months ago the RNC called for the DNC to return all the money it got from another accused abuser, Harvey Weinstein. Yet, the RNC is refusing to give up Wynn's money, saying they will only do so if he's officially found guilty. Emmanuel, do you view that as an acceptable response?
I do not view it as an acceptable response.
Unstoppable is back and ready to bring you all things GW Sports. I'm Casey Decker, here with Sean Grant. And Sean, what do we have in store today? We're going to start things off with the GW program that right now could make a strong case for being the best on campus. And by that, I mean men's water polo. Right now, they are ranked number 14 in the nation, tied for the highest standing in program history. They are 9-5 on the season and 5-1 in conference play. Now, you might be thinking 9-5, that sounds pretty average. Why are they so highly ranked? The answer is that this team knows how to come through in big games. They have wins against 15th ranked Air Force and most recently, the number 9 team in the country, Bucknell. Okay. Well, Sean, it's basketball season, of course, so plenty to discuss there. We'll also wrap up a number of fall sports and look ahead to the new season starting up now. And the head coach of the GW water polo program will be joining Sean here in the studio. It's going to be a good show, so keep watching Unstoppable. Another thing is that defenses and opposing coaches know this. CNIT is constantly tested, and the team is constantly tested by the full court press. We saw it in some of the very early games, and what I think happened is opposing coaches watched the film and saw that we couldn't break the press. And so every single game that I've watched, at some point, sooner rather than later, and lately it's been sooner, they start putting on the press, and they don't stop because it works. Well, look, this is a team that had a lot of potential. From the beginning of the season, we knew that they could be good. We saw really early on they beat nationally ranked Arkansas, but right after that, they lost a big stretch of games. And I think that right there kind of sums up the season for them, just not very consistent. And so it was a young team and a young coach, and it took a little while for them to congeal, but eventually they came together. They won 5 games in a row towards the end of the season. They had a home win against Dayton on senior night, and this is a team that by the end of the year looked like it has a good future. And I think going into these tournament games, there's a lot expected out of them. I think this might be a team that does better as an underdog. We saw them excel against teams like Dayton. And so I think when you come in with expectations and then you start to miss shots, you start to panic a little bit, and that can be difficult to overcome. This is one of the best offensive teams in the region, but they just don't have the pitching. Now, in terms of that offense, one of the best offenses is the A-10. They're number 1 in batting average, number 2 in slugging, on base, runs scored, hits, RBIs, doubles, and total bases, and number 3 in homers. This is a team that can hit and they can score. If you look at their lineup, for example, almost every player in their starting lineup has above a 300 batting average right now. So it's a very good offensive team. They also have pretty good defense. They make very few errors. But when it comes to pitching specifically, they do not have very much depth. They have Sarah Kostlow. She's really their only pitcher. She has a 2.12 ERA right now. Very impressive. But she's also pitched, I think, 96 out of a total 212 innings pitched for the team. So she's pitching about half of their innings right now. It's a big month for GW Sports. We'll catch up with the basketball teams as they near the postseason and discuss what they need to do to finish strong. We'll look at some of the sports already in the postseason, like track and squash, as well as those teams just starting out their seasons, from women's water polo to lacrosse. We've got reports on both the men's and women's tennis squads as they begin their indoor seasons, and on the high-flying, high-performing Colonial Gymnastics team. And finally, I'll sit down with the first-year head coach of women's basketball, Jennifer Rosati. I agree with you 100%. He's a good shooter normally, and when you're shooting that low, when you're shooting 3 for 13, the only reason is shot selection. There are some bright spots, though. As we saw in the VCU game, they finally figured out how to handle the press. And it was against the Havoc, too, one of the best presses in the country.